Here we go. This is going to be a little bit of an experiment. Another first here. By the way, does everyone love the... Hold on, I always point over my wrong shoulder. Everyone like the painting in the background? That was actually a fundraiser for the New Jersey Libertarian Party. And that was done by the better half of Mike Rufo. So Mike definitely doesn't have that skill set, and I certainly don't either. So his wife was nice enough to put that up for auction, and I was lucky enough to win the auction. So that will be a standard in the background of my pieces here in the future. I am Matt. This is Why Libertarian. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet. The reason why this is partly an experiment is because tonight's the first time I am live casting to Odyssey. That's right, I'm not waiting for YouTube to download to Odyssey. We are actually live on Odyssey right now, so you can upvote that live streaming on Odyssey. Obviously, throw it a follow, and help us both earn some crypto, some library credits over there on Odyssey. So that is a first. And as always, you can check out all of the different places that I stream to and I post to on my link tree. It'll be on the scroll during this video. The other thing I'm going to say is I am giving away crypto on the Hive blockchain. Go to my Twitter feed at LibertarianY. Look at the pinned post. There are some step-by-step instructions on how you get onto the Hive blockchain and post your first post in the Liberty community to become eligible for that 100 Hive that I'm giving away live on May 31st. So definitely check that out. All right. All that being said, I have a face who is not a stranger to this show but he is here in a different capacity because this week we are profiling his organization, one of the organization that he is a major contributor to, and this is going to be a reoccurring thing. Again, the theme is building community, giving back, decentralization, not waiting on the government to help us out and doing things for ourselves, as well as helping those around us. And I think this is a fantastic organization to profile as the first nonprofit that I'll be profiling in that vein. So without further ado, I am introducing you yet again to Dan Francisco from Blue Star Union. How's it going, brother?
What's up, my friends? Great to see you.
That's a very European, popish kind of like.
I was going for like a wrestling entrance type thing, like up on the turnbuckle.
Can you hear me?
Hey, man. Yesterday, that show was awesome with Sal, Jose, and Clean Libertarian. I had the joy of being able to talk to Clean Libertarian like a month ago. But, man, Sal and Jose, that was a great episode. If you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you check out Matt's conversation yesterday.
Yeah, that panel discussion was fantastic. It came together because Sal put up a post that basically, like Sal normally does, ruffle some feathers. And I was like, dude, we just got to talk about this. This is something that, people get all up in arms about and stuff. We gotta talk about whether or not it should be, politics or culture first. I think it's most definitely a culture first answer, but, I'll leave that up to other people to kind of decide. So really quickly, for anyone who is not familiar with you and with Blue Star Union, who are you?
Sure. So we are a New Jersey-based civil rights group. Our motto is building a culture of consequence. It kind of goes along with what you just described, Matt. We also do not subscribe to the notion of, hey, let's solve our problems through democracy. Let's solve our problems through the force of the state. Why don't we build voluntary communities and find a way to push culture to reach our ends, whether they be political, whether they be business, whether they be whatever you want it to be. So I got started in politics maybe about 10 years ago. I used to run Project Veritas back in like 2012, 2013. That's where I kind of dipped my toes in the sort of political movement and became very disillusioned with politics right there because I was actually rubbing shoulders with a lot of the people that were kind of rising during that Tea Party era. And look, I've profiled before talking to people about how my politics have changed over the years. And man, when you start, like I said, like yesterday, where you listen to people like Sal, you start. Well, here's another thing. Here's a silly thing to say. I hate that it's not agorist because that's how I read it all the time. And I get corrected that it's agorist. Yes. Doesn't it sound better as agorist?
It flows better. But really, I mean, maybe there needs to be another name because, it comes from agora, right? Like the marketplace. But yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like even on the live cast, I had to correct myself a couple times.
I heard you flip flop a few times. I'm like, he said it wrong.
Yeah.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
But
So
by the way, very nice hat and shirt, man. I wonder where'd you get that?
it's really weird. Like I went to this place and they had some like pretty cool duds. Definitely at the either at simultaneously or at the end of this video, go over to bluestarunion.com and check out the organization. Go to the shop, check out the apparel's fantastic. Just in general terms, I mean, like I'm not like a fashionable person, but in terms of just like dude type stuff, and even like the designs for the women's t-shirts and tank tops and stuff like that are fantastic too. In fact, you just came out with the Hawaiian luau themed Blue Star Union logo, right?
Yeah, our friend Mike Rufo coined it the Beluau shirt.
Yeah.
Beluau Star Union shirt, which our friend Dan Jacinto, who was actually invisible but on a mic about a week ago on one of our streams, one of my good friends, he designed our logo. He designed a lot of the shirts that we have here in the store. And the most recent one that I just want to plug out there, if you don't mind, is the one I'm wearing right now. If you can see it on camera. Says, who is Daniel Shaver? We had the fortune to interview Lainey Sweet, who is the wife of Daniel Shaver, last week. And for those of you that don't know, he was gunned down in Mesa, Arizona at a hotel by the Mesa Police Department. The story is unfathomable. If you haven't heard it before, please go onto our YouTube channel and find it's about one video ago. And we are running a fundraiser for Lainey and her family. They were kicked out of their house. They're carless. I actually saw that she went on Thaddeus Russell after she interviewed with us, and someone donated a car to her, which I was very happy to hear.
Oh, that's amazing.
All of the proceeds from this shirt, all of the profits, 100% are going to Lainey and her family. So I'm going to let it run for about 2 months. Then I'm going to tally it up and cut a check and send it over to her. So if you want to support her and advertise, his name and keep his legacy alive, go to bluestarunion.com/store, and it's the first product there. Yeah,
and definitely check out the interview, because the story itself is an incredible just abomination of law enforcement who is what people would assume are supposed to protect, right? Which we can get into a little bit if you want to, in terms of their Supreme Court decision or Superior Court decision that basically says no, it's not their responsibility to protect. But most people assume that it is, and then basically the abdication of that, or the exact opposite, where someone is compliant to the point of getting face down on the ground and then being essentially shot in the back. Which is absolutely insanity. So definitely check out that video and pick up one of those shirts and help keep Daniel's legacy alive, as well as to help his family. He has two young daughters too, right?
Yes, they do. And one of them was like 3 years old when he was killed. So to think like this child probably has like a little memory even of her father, which is terrible to even conceive. So like I said, the shirt is marked up from the price of our normal shirts, and that's purely because it's all a fundraiser. So whatever anyone is willing to support, throw out there. Buy a shirt for yourself, buy one for your spouse, buy one for your friend. It's all going to her family. So we wish her the best in her battle as she tries to reconcile not only her legal battle, but the emotional battle of overcoming his passing.
Yeah. No, you're doing fantastic work highlighting that story and stories like that, where, folks' rights are infringed upon by, whatever you want to call it, the state, the local government, the federal government, all of those instances where folks are obviously not free and reminded painfully of that. So with that, I have a couple of clips. I'm going to play one first. I want to kind of like break up the interview process a little bit. All right. So this first one it's actually your most or second most viewed full video on the YouTube channel. This is you basically just kind of getting out amongst the public in Seaside Heights in New Jersey at the Jersey Shore, interviewing some folks. And you have an interaction with some of the local law enforcement. I'll leave it at that, and then we can discuss kind of the particulars afterward. Here we go.
Awesome.
Hey guys, I just want to make sure you got a permit for interviews up on the boardwalk.
What's that?
I just want to make sure you guys have the permit that was given to you, or supposed to be given to you, or you get from the borough to be able to film up on the boardwalk.
Yeah, I think we had somebody talk to us about this last week. You need a permit to talk to people and have a phone or.
Yeah, it's mainly to film. The interview part of it is not a problem. It's just a camera.
All right, what's your name?
My name is Joe Miniaga, badge number 4103.
Okay.
I respect you. I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I have my phone out and walk around like this talking to people? We're talking about racial violence. We're talking about guns. We're talking about civics. What's the issue with humans assembling and talking to each other with a guy holding a camera?
So the whole thing is, this is a private boardwalk, believe it or not.
This is private. Officer, is this a private boardwalk?
Who owns it?
What?
Who owns it?
The borough of Seaside Heights.
That's not private. That's public property.
Unfortunately, it's still considered a private area.
Seaside Heights Boardwalk.
And what's your name and badge number, sir?
Rainer 9060.
This boardwalk, I just want to put on the record here on this boardwalk is private property.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Owned by a municipality.
Yes.
Who owns it?
The borough of Seaside Heights.
The borough is a government. That's a government.
Right. Okay.
That's not private property.
All right. Look, there's no problem here.
Yeah.
He's just telling you you can interview whoever you want.
Yeah.
The problem is with the filming. So that's a.
What
borough-
about everybody taking a picture with their phone? That's filming. What's wrong with?
That's a picture.
What about I can take a video of my phone right now and film
Right, but
everyone?
when you're doing it while interviewing, there's a difference. You know
Wow, man.
What are your thoughts looking back on that?
There's so much behind that. So first of all, I live in Monmouth County now in Englishtown, which is about 45, 50 minutes away from that town. But I used to live in Toms River, 5 minutes from that boardwalk. I know it very well. That guy that you see there is more than likely a Special 2 officer, which is like the entry-level type officers. The guys that are in the gray shirts, the one who came up to me, he's not a cop. He's a code enforcement guy. So if you walk up and down the boardwalk in Seaside Heights, there's a ton of gray shirts there because they're trying to find violations to write you up. It's revenue enforcement, right?
Yep.
Notice, like, first of all, how he surrounds me, right? Like, if you notice, the gray guy confronts me, and the yellow cop, like, goes behind me to kind of, like, surround the two of us. Now, the black guy that's there with me, Steve, I had never met him before, and we became great friends after that because we connected on when that little incident happened.
I was gonna say, the moment that happened, I was like, I like that guy. Like, he must know him, or there was just like an instant kind of like, all right, we understand each other kind of thing going on.
I set out to if you've watched our content in the summertime, I love going to the boardwalk because you just meet so many different kinds of people. He was the first guy that day I spoke to and the last one because we had such good content with the officer that we both said, like, we know how it works with cops. Let's just get away from these guys and let's go have a beer. And we actually went and drank after that. And then Steve ended up coming here to the bunker, did a podcast with me and came to our parties. He's a super smart dude. He lives in Trenton. And I'm glad that, like, the best thing about doing these segments is I make new friends, right? And that's really what this organization is about at its heart. But so in that incident, the yellow, that's the actual law enforcement officer. He's the one that would arrest me if something were to happen. Now, we were very young at that time, and I had zero interest in going to court and fighting it just because of the nuisance of it. But I just wanted to prove a point about, what he was doing. So I knew the ordinances. I looked up the Seaside Heights ordinances. There is an ordinance that specifically protects people from recording so long as it's not for like a business enterprise, right? Mm-hmm. If you're filming like the Jersey Shore show, right? The MTV crew is there. That's a for-profit enterprise. If you're filming a documentary, those things, yes, require you to file a permit with I don't know if it's the borough or the planning commission or whatever bureaucracy governs that. And it's explicitly written out. It explicitly protects my ability to walk around the boardwalk. Now think of how insane this notion is that cop tried to say to me. Everyone and their mother is Instagramming, snapping, taking pictures, taking videos of seagulls eating French fries, girls in their bikinis. It's mentally insane to make the argument that I'm not allowed to record people while I talk to them. Okay, this happened in Point Pleasant also. Ironically, Point Pleasant is private property, where Seaside Heights is not. And now think of that dissonance too. How many times I had to repeat to him, Who is this private property? He says, yes, private property. Who owns it? The government. Well, that's not private property, buddy. Like, this is the level of intelligence, like that these people who arrest people, are responsible for this nonsense. So I went back and forth with him for a while, and then ultimately I was just like, I don't feel like getting arrested. And I said, are you detaining me? He said no, and I walked away. And Steve and I went like high-fiving and laughing, and we went and had a beer. So hey, we made a great new friend who's a part of the group now, and we demonstrated to people how like silly and capricious these revenue cops can behave, especially in shore towns.
Oh, no kidding. Like, especially if they know that you're from out of town, because you don't want to come back to fight the ticket, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's exactly like, a statey pulling someone over who's speeding a little bit over the limit and writing them a ticket in a state, and they can see the license plate. They know they're not from the state. You're not going to go back 500 miles in order to go fight a ticket, and so it's kind of like it's like a action of opportunity, right? Like they just do it because they can. I love the fact that you keep going back and be like, wait, you're like going back and forth between the two. Like, who owns it? Who owns it? Who owns it? Like, are you listening to what you're saying right now?
Yeah, because the gray shirt guy was yapping at first. And I don't know if you can notice in the video because the camera got in too close to me. But at one point, the gray guy kept chirping while I was talking to Yellow. Yeah. And then Gray shut up. And then Yellow shut up. So then I was like, okay, I thought you were talking before. Let me keep throwing the microphone, like this and play ping pong between you two. But it's the point I want to get across about this. And this was something that if you watch our videos with the Trump rallies at Governor Murphy's house, this was a question I asked to the typical partisan Republicans who defend the police. I said to them, is it okay that police can lie to you? Do you find that acceptable? And some people like ponder that and say, I don't know. And some people say yes. Some people say no. Some people say, what do you mean? They're not allowed to lie. I'm like, of course they're allowed to lie. That guy lied to me in that video. He made up a law that doesn't exist. And it said that I would be consequenced if I didn't obey his fake command.
And it doesn't have to be intentional either. Right. Like you can lie because you're just mistaken, like is the case with this.
You have immunity. Yeah, that's literally like when people talk about qualified immunity, they think that means like they just don't get in trouble if they kill someone. That's not what it means. It's an intentional negligence of what they perceive to be the law, right? And if they can prove that like, oh, I wasn't aware that I was breaking the law, then he's fine. That's where the qualified immunity comes in. So that's literally what he did. Right, and I went up to a woman who was running for governor and asked her this question. She's wearing a blue dress. If you go back through our videos, and I talked to her for like 20 minutes, and I said, "Is it okay if cops lie to you? Is that something you're morally comfortable with?" And she was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, there's sting operations where they say that they're prostitutes, or they run guns and sell you illegal products, or in this case, they just tell you if you don't leave, I'm going to arrest you because it's illegal, and I need your license, or I need to identify you." Yep. They are allowed to lie with impunity, yet if I at any point lied to them, I could be put in handcuffs.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a one-way road. It's a double standard in terms of how that goes.
Of course.
Our mutual buddy Rancid Whiskey says, you need to learn respect for authority. The city owns the property paid for with stolen funds from the citizens.
That's right, man. And they only have 3 short summer months to make up that revenue, man. So they've got to get cracking.
You got to get while the getting's good. So, all right, I want to intersperse some questions about Blue Star as an organization. So you had mentioned you got involved politically in the past. What made you go the route of creating a nonprofit? Why not a PAC or some other kind of political action vehicle?
So I definitely have zero interest in doing the partisan PAC kind of stuff. Oh, let's support this tribe. Let's support this gang. You and I are. If the audience isn't aware, Matt and I are good friends. Off the mic here, so we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. We agonize about this theory. And again, it was exemplified in the conversation you had last night with Sal and Jose and Clean Libertarian. Yep. I don't think process is the way to victory or the way to liberty, if you will. I don't think democracy is the way to liberty. You know who the first person... I always had, at first, libertarian leanings. Once I was, maybe 10 years ago, I got off the neocon train and I got on the libertarian train. And then I think one of the first voices that really made me go, huh, and, question it was Cody Wilson. Right? I saw his bit on Glenn Beck, who I don't like Glenn Beck for many personal reasons that I know from being in politics back in the day. But, he's kind of a hack to me. And to see Cody Wilson, this kid who was like 23 at the time, just rip him apart with this very like nonchalant attitude. And Glenn was being a dick to him. Like it's literally one of the best clips. I watch it like once every 6 months just for fun. And that was like the first time where I realized he said a quote like, "You see that gun or those plans? That's a real political act. That's radical equality." And I was like, holy shit. That has nothing to do with voting. That has nothing to do with Republicans. That has nothing to do with Democrats. That has nothing to do with PACs. That has nothing to do with protests. And he says it's now a fact of history that thing exists, and there's nothing that the state can do to take it away. And a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, wow, this guy who calls himself an anarchist, and at that time that word was scary to me. All right, it was that was the shh word. I was like, wow, that really opened my presence in that sphere. And from there, make friends and have conversations and pursue other things. And here we are a couple months ago reading Rothbard and reading about nullification and doing our book clubs. And I literally, it's so funny, Matt. You said last night, you said to Sal is the same thing. You said about a year ago, I might have been a minarchist. Now I'm an anarchist. And now you're like, fuck the whole system. I don't want to be a part of it. That's literally like how I would probably describe myself, like to the T. It's hilarious.
So, and as a nonprofit, Blue Star doesn't get politically involved, right? You're Switzerland, right? So you'll host, you're almost like what the League of Women Voters used to be like for like the presidential election, right? Like you'll host a debate, you'll kind of like do interviews and stuff like that. But the goal is not partisan politics, it's not fundraising or anything like that. It's really awareness about civil liberties is the core of it.
Yeah, we're like the League of Women Voters, but a little less shrill. It's not a. Yeah. No, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and what that means is we legally are not allowed to politic for a party, a politician, or legislation, right? So we cannot ever say, hey, we love the Affordable Care Act, you should have voted for it, Bart Stupak back in 2010. We legally can't say things like that. I can interview a gubernatorial candidate, I can interview a guy running for Senate, I can interview a sitting politician, I can question them and attack them or criticize them, I can have a dialogue about political issues. I just can never, as an organization, endorse anyone. In my personal life, I do hold like a small office in my town here on the council, but obviously that's all separate from the organization. But I don't believe I agree with the philosophy that we always say culture comes before politics. Culture is what drives politics, and if you own the culture, that's way more important than sitting in office somewhere. So that's kind of our goal. Our motto is building a culture of consequence, and that's precisely what we mean by that.
Yeah, no, I'm wholly on board with that one. I think you made the right decision, because the other options that you probably had on the table would have painted you into a corner or left you with little adaptability or kind of that range of things that you could be doing in order to raise awareness to certain things. What would you say your biggest issues are, like individual issues? First Amendment, freedom of speech stuff?
So it's no secret if you watch our content that I'm personally very passionate about the Second Amendment space. We ourselves are involved in some legal maneuvers that we are hoping to be able to share in the next couple of months. So stay tuned to that. We will have news on that front with legal stuff going on in New Jersey. We've done a lot of conversations about the Second Amendment. I was very close friends with, and still am close friends with, Alexander Rubian, who runs the New Jersey Second Amendment Society. I actually met him, I want to say in 2012, at a speech that I was making on behalf of Project Veritas to a bunch of movement people for NJ2AS at Gun for Hire up in, at that time it was in Belleville. Now I think it's in Woodland Park up in North Jersey. So that's how I met Alexander, and I did a lot of work with him over the last 5 years. And when COVID hit, my friend David, who's on the board, we were just like, let's start our own thing. Let's do something that we believe in and something we think is impactful. And David is a person that not only is he a close friend of mine that I've known since I was literally 9 years old, he's someone that also has shaped my opinions in a lot of ways. So that's how we felt the best way to contribute to the movement, if you will, is to operate outside of the partisan sphere, the democratic sphere, if you will, and try to push a change in culture.
Yeah, that's smart. I like the tack that you took there. And so it's Second Amendment. You also hit on First Amendment, and education, I think, is something that you also have. Is that an organizational focus, or that's just something that's kind of near and dear to you personally?
It's both. It's near and dear to me. I would venture to say, I mean, the Second Amendment's my favorite issue to talk about and to fight for. However, I would argue that from a cultural perspective and a political perspective, you would change the direction of this country in orders of magnitude higher if you influence the educational space. Now, yesterday, we actually went down and filmed a segment. We haven't uploaded yet. We're still editing it, but we filmed a segment down in Stafford or Manahawkin, New Jersey. It was at a Stafford public school where a nurse was being fired at a board meeting because she refused to enforce this mask mandate, and she was arguing that it's actually unhealthy for children to be wearing a mask all day for like 8 hours a day. So they put her on suspension, and they were having a board of education meeting to like formally fire her, like formally dismiss her. So there was this enormous crowd, and I actually was asked to speak there yesterday. And I was a little disappointed, I think, in how I got my message across. I feel like I could have done a little bit better. But I think it's evident of how much we have yet to fight this culture war. Because I frankly don't see eye to eye, and I know you agree with this, Matt. Like, I don't see eye to eye with Republican types in New Jersey who understand and recognize that what is going on in government schools is unhealthy and bad for their kids. And then while they admit that reality, they continue to send their kids there, protest from the outside. The government says, fuck you, no. And then they go, okay, keep having my kid. Like, it's like the ultimate cuckery. Like, I don't understand it. And I literally, it's almost comical, man. I got in front of the crowd. I asked a very silly question. I was like, okay, how many of you are for a monopoly of healthcare? And half the crowd didn't even know what I meant. I'm like, okay, let me use a buzzword. How many of you are against socialized medicine? And they're like, yeah, they all raised their hands. I'm like, okay, why are you for socialized education? And they all like went silent. Like, it's like, and then I said, just take your kids out of this tyrannical hellhole. Thank you. And I walked off. But it's like I don't think I connected with it. There were a couple of people that came up to me and talked to us after. A couple of which actually were going to come on and interview with us. But it's like that is the cultural missing of the mark, right? The people who claim to be the loudest protesters of these policies and think that the schools are teaching their kids dangerous things that maybe don't align with their social or political or religious views, whatever it may be. They don't like the economic perspective. They think it's Marxist, whatever kind of buzzword. They don't like it, and then they continue to subject their kids to it. I don't get it. And until we have this conversation about, hey, school is bad. Like, government school is a bad, evil thing. It is a structure. It is a prison for your body and mind so that you enter into a lifetime of servitude to the state. It's a way of indoctrinating children to be good servants as adults to the government, period. Most people are not saying that, okay? Most people don't make these arguments. So, yes, when it comes to like our big issues, I talk about that very loudly because I think that's a reality that people need to hear. And it's jarring to people. It goes against the constructs that they've heard their whole life because there is a sort of like a good morality. School is a good. It's a moral good, right? Education's a good thing. They've indoctrinated people with this. I don't look, Matt, you have young kids. Who the hell thinks like a 7-year-old boy should be in a chair for 8 hours a day not moving, and then when he fidgets his foot a little bit, like throw some pills at him because he's going crazy? Like,
well, that's actually what's interesting is there's all kinds of dominoes that come from that, right? Like, so the first thing I would say is no one in that room that you were in or were in that gathering is against socialized education. They just think it should be wielded differently. Right? Like they think it should teach different things, right?
There's two sacred cows. You know what the two sacred cows are. You can say them yourself.
It's education and policing. That's what it is.
You can't. It doesn't matter how conservative you get. The cops and the police are just those are the two government pillars that must be there. They're enshrined. They're sacred cows. But everything else we can have a discussion about. And if you say anything about the two sacred cows, you're a pariah. They cast you off. And that's why when I tell people there's really not a difference between these parties, right? One party invents a bunch of regulations, and then the other party cheers on the government arm that enforces the regulations. They're all criminals to me, but this is the duality we live in.
It's they act like they hate each other, but it's like one hand washes the other.
It's the same shit.
All right, so I have another clip here to play. So obviously, this past year has given you and everyone in the world pretty much enough material to go off of when it comes to civil liberties and cognitive dissonance, when it comes to laws and regulations and how those are enforced, and this idea of equality and equity that everyone is chasing, that mythical unicorn of equity. So this is something that I think this was in Englishtown, or was it in Manalapan? The Juneteenth march.
So there's a lot of background to that. Well, I'll color it in after you play it. It started at the Manalapan Police Department, which ironically is like a half mile away from the Englishtown Police Department. So they actually crossed on a county road from Manalapan into Englishtown and concluded it at the Englishtown Police Department.
Okay, so this is an interview with you in and amongst the people that are marching, and it's really short, but I found it kind of funny. So here, let's watch this real quick.
Who am I talking to?
You're talking to Lisa?
Lisa, how's it going?
You know what? To be honest with you, not good. I have a husband, an African-American husband, which I love dearly, 2 daughters, okay? And I fear for their lives. No comment. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, someone else just told her not to speak.
No comment.
Got you. All right, so this is a free speech rally, but now we're telling other people not to speak. That's right. That's fair. It's your right to not speak to me. Thank you. But I just want to make that clear that it's other people telling people not to speak. So I guess your voice matters only if someone else tells you it's allowed.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
That is a thing of beauty right there. It is it's the most delicious morsel of irony, right?
That's actually really common when you go to leftist events. Not that I don't think that woman was leftist or not, but that always happens where it's someone's what's the word I'm searching for? They're kind of innocent, and they're like, "Oh, I'll talk to you," and then some fairy godmother that comes from behind, "No, don't talk to those people." "Oh, no comment," and then they walk away. So this is really funny. So that was the first time I ever did a public sort of event as Blue Star Union. Yeah. I admittedly think I did very poorly in that video. I've said that many times since then, but it was a learning experience, and I met a lot of interesting people. And coincidentally, it ended in my town, literally on my block where I live. So they marched from Manalapan to the Englishtown Police Department, had a 10-minute conversation, and then marched back to their cars in the Manalapan Rec Center, which is a park. So that was me following them after their speeches, going back to their cars. The funny part is there were actually not a lot of black people there, and a ton of people were telling me "Oh my God, you're crazy for going in there. There's crazy people coming." I'm like, "Are you stupid? There's gonna be 100 soccer moms virtue signaling and 5 probably black activists, and those are the people I want to talk to. That's exactly who I want to hear from." So there's no secret that I sympathize with the story of George Floyd, and I'm in no way condoning what happened, but I'm trying to talk to people to get their opinions, mostly about firearms, because I brought up anecdotes about Martin Luther King getting denied his carry permit, and what if George Floyd, and the people around George Floyd were armed. Maybe they could have defended themselves. So it's kind of just trying to show this dichotomy that they don't actually want guns, but then it's just people self-censoring. The funny thing was the person who ran that event. Okay, so just so you understand, these are 2 towns in Monmouth County, right? And I'm in Englishtown. They had the Manalapan Police Department, the Englishtown Police Department. I believe they brought in the Monroe Police Department, and I want to say the Jamesburg Police Department. The Monmouth County sheriffs were there with drug-sniffing dogs, and they had riflemen on a roof, okay? This is all over a bunch of teenagers and a couple of soccer moms who just demonstrating for 10 minutes. All of this money, all of this nonsense. And everyone in my town, when I told them, because everyone was gearing up there was going to be a war. I was like, "What are you talking about? Nothing's going to happen." They're like, "You're crazy. You're crazy for going out there." I'm like, "I'm literally going to walk right in the middle of all of them and talk to them. They're They're just people. It's okay.
You're gonna die.
Yeah, Matt, I'm not shitting you. That's what I was told. I got called insane for like going to talk to these people. So the girl that organized this, ironically, didn't even give a shit about George Floyd. She just had a personal issue with like a police officer and spent the entire time. You can actually see the video also on our channel, just like shitting on like our police chief, and then left. So she didn't even really care about like George Floyd. That was just a facade for her to complain about her like little personal issue, and then she left. And she doesn't even live in the town. So it was very odd. It was like, I'm sympathetic to you, but then you're acting like idiots, and then you don't even want to talk. So it's like, why are you here? Like, why don't you want to get your message across?
Just like we talked about the cognitive dissonance of the conservatives. I mean, if you are a liberal and you're in that crowd, and you had a number of these conversations where you were talking about, self-defense and personal firearms, ownership and the ability to carry and defend yourself. And these people can't connect the dots between, police officers that have a monopoly on walking around the state with guns and the individuals that are, in some of these cases, aggressed upon by the police officers, not also being able to carry firearms and defend themselves. Right. And there is just like this cognitive dissonance that's on both sides, where they just can't seem to connect those intellectual dots. I think the other aspect of it was, I think it was at that event too. There was a gentleman there, was an older white gentleman, I think, that at one point in time, I think he like took issue with something that was happening, right? Like, I think he took issue with where they were, or I think there was like, I think some people were like shouting down some of the police officers. And I think he took issue with that. And then all of a sudden there was this like, again, this kind of censorship by the leadership of the organization that kind of like tried to push him out, because they wanted a cohesive, voice, whatever that was,
I know what you're referring to. Yeah,
it was a really odd situation. Did I characterize that correctly, or?
Yeah. So if there was these two middle-aged guys. One was white, one was black. The guys, the kids who were running the event were like young, a couple, like 2 or 3 young, 2 black women and like a black guy, maybe in their 20s, right? Relatively young, maybe in their early 30s. Yeah. And the woman was the one orchestrating it, who had the problem with the police. She's the one that was leading the march, like with a megaphone. And what happened was, the girl, at that time, the detective sergeant, and another officer were standing there. Now, this is like the sort of inside knowledge was the police said, we'll hold this line, and as long as they don't aggress onto the police department property, the municipal property, we'll let them do whatever they want. So most of the people stayed in the street, and the police were fine with that. And a couple of people went up to the detective and cursed them off to his face. And a couple of people shouted at our chief, who I want to say he wasn't even there. He was there, but like in a building, like behind the building or something. And they were cursing him off. And then what happened was, the girl running it said, quote, "You're dead," like called out the chief's name and said on the megaphone, "You're dead. You're gonna," and everyone cheered. And that's when the white guy was like, "No, don't do that. Like, don't threaten people." And that's what the argument was about. So it's like I don't want to get into like the inside baseball about what happened with that after, but suffice it to say, like, that became a thing, and then it was not a thing, and that was what the argument was about. It wasn't like, "Oh, I don't want you to speak." It was a guy going, "Don't threaten people. Like, that's not cool." And like you got balls like threatening a cop that they may consequence you. Like, okay, whatever. So he was like, I'm all for you. Just don't threaten him personally." And then the older black guy was calming down the middle-aged white guy. It was funny. It's just kids, being stupid, if you ask me.
So what I appreciate is that you'll say this at these events, like, you are there to show these things for what they truly are, right? So like, you're not looking to, creatively cut and edit these things and like, take 2 pieces of a person's statement, cut out the middle and put them together and try and make people that watch or view this content think that someone said something that they didn't, or take something out of context. So, I mean, are people usually that situation? I think a lot of people were fairly receptive to you. There were some people that were obviously trying to censor what was said or who was talked to. But in these types of like gatherings, and even when you're out like on the boardwalk, are people usually pretty open and willing to talk, or are some people, really defensive and kind of like closed off about, giving their opinion on the record?
The boardwalk is the best place because the people there are not overtly political, right? The people that are hanging out there are going to drink. They're a young family with their kids going on rides. They're going to some sort of entertainment. They're going out to eat. You get a more diverse, in the true sense of the word, crowd, right? You get all different types of people from all walks of life at all different stages of life. Those people are more fun, and they're more Joe Schmo, working class, normal people. So they want to come up, they want to talk to you, and even if you say it's a YouTube interview, most people are interested in talking. When you go to the political events, they're very skeptical of you because they know there's like a cohesive message and a cohesive ideology there, and they presume that if you're there to like interrogate them, that you're somehow trying to embarrass them. Now, I'm glad you mentioned like, okay, what's our kind of tactic when we go to these things? So I'm going to be honest. I don't just go there and go, I'm going to ask you these 3 random questions and then take your answers and put them in a video. I think that's kind of boring because let's be honest, a lot of people are stupid and we don't want to hear like everyone's pontification about some random subject that they're wrong about, right? So my goal, and I talk with David, I talk with our friends in our circle, and I go, this event is about X. What is a sort of tangential idea that I can build to either show that the person gets it and is smart, or that they're being hypocritical? And it's not so much that I'm trying to catch them, because it's not like a aha. It's like, listen, if you are ideologically consistent, you will like answer the correct path, right? I'm not trying to trick you, but I am presenting or stacking the questions in a way where the question 1 and question 2 may build to a contradiction on question 3. And the goal is to sort of show that either people maybe don't understand what's going on at the rally, or there's just some hypocritical aspect of it. And the point is, it's not fun to just like go rah-rah and cheer on whatever the people are there for. I'm usually emotionally unattached to whatever the people there are advocating because I'm not a partisan person. I don't care about Republicans or Democrats. I don't care about Donald Trump. I don't care about Joe Biden. So when I talk to them, I actually relish talking to whoever the minority is, right? And in New Jersey, in the last year during this presidential race, it's really funny. I don't know if it's just a counterculture thing, but all of the events were Republican events. There were no organic Joe Biden like flag waving events, Democrat events, so much so that when we went to the Route 18 flag waving in East Brunswick Trump events, they started to get once in a while counter demonstrators on the other side that were having like BLM and transgender and Joe Biden signs. And I had more fun talking to them because, as silly and naive as some of them may have been, they were at least like open and expressive and willing to say things. And I had a more honest dialogue with them, even if they may have been a little naive or incorrect. But there was a sort of purity, there was a sort of innocence and willingness to speak, where like the middle-aged like Republican will be like, if I say one thing that kind of contradicts their worldview, they're like, oh, in their head they're like, are you some commie, or like, are you this, are you that, or like, and they see this logo and they go, blue, what is that, a Democrat thing? I'm like, no. And the leftists are like, is that a cop thing? I'm like, definitely not. But it's funny because the logo is like intentionally vague, and it's I call it a Rorschach test for your soul, because everybody that looks at this logo automatically injects their own bias of like, it's this thing that I'm against, right? That's immediately where their brain jumps to. So I like being the guy who's nowhere on the spectrum, and I come in like I just kind of descend on the event, whatever it's about, and try to show an interesting point that's either hypocrisy that I see about it or something that I think I can kind of make people meander on a little bit.
Yeah, and it's very it's very how should I put it? It's kind of like a intellectual proof that you go through, because you're not really making statements, right? You're not pontificating or trying to win a debate. It's mostly you're asking questions, and those questions, those people, the next question will essentially, they'll lead themselves in the direction that they either want to go, or like you said, they've been kind of ideologically programmed to go in that direction. And you're just kind of like, Okay, thank you. Like I appreciate your answer to that. You're now on the record
Right.
whether or not you do seem like you've kind of like thought it out or not. I appreciate that a lot.
And I do tell them like either on the if they ask me, what do you think about this? I'll tell them. Like it's not, I'm not hiding it. Like it's not some secret agenda. And oftentimes we have long conversations when the camera's off. And the best part about this is we make so many friends doing this. Contacts. We get people who want to interview. Listen, that rally I went to yesterday, I admit, I think I did very poorly interviewing people. I was a little off my game, and I gave a speech that didn't really go over well in front of the crowd. But you know what? I've got two people that are going to be interviewing with us, one of which a devastating story that I can't wait to share because I was there. And I have this philosophy that unless you're out in the public, like meeting people, these things, just serendipity does not happen. You have to be out in that public sphere, shaking hands, talking to people, whether you agree with them or not. And I've had people here in the bunker. I've had people at our parties, some of which you've been at, where there's people from all stripes, all backgrounds, all political affiliations, having great arguments, great debates, and having a beer. And we couldn't do that if we weren't putting ourselves out there.
Yeah, I would say probably the only place that the bunker is second to in diversity is probably the UN headquarters when it has people in it.
we've had it all, man. Dude, I've had people who have admitted that they're multiple felons. I've had people who are trust fund babies. I had black, white, Hispanic, Asian, gay, straight, religious, atheist. I mean, we've literally had every walk of life here. And it's that old saying, I'm going to butcher it, but you may think like people are your enemy, but when you start talking to them, you realize that's a human next to me. I have more in common with them than I have against them. I just have this silly little political dispute with them. But beyond that, it's a human, right? And it's a potential friend.
And in most cases, you both want the same thing. You just disagree on the road to get there.
Yeah, right? They're just not right. That's the only difference.
So one of your most faithful watchers / listeners, Mish Lepke, says the logo reminds him of something sports-like, some kind of a sports team logo. On a personal note, you're very much a soccer fan. Did that kind of craft the logo at all, or was that kind of outside of it?
Yeah, so I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly. I think I've mentioned it to you privately once, but the spirit of where this logo comes from is for outside the political sphere. It was indeed a soccer club logo. So my parents are immigrants from Portugal, and my father, when he was young, in his little tiny hometown of like a few thousand people, one of these towns that has a train stop that goes to the big city in the province, and nobody really cares about being there, and everybody who grew up there knows everybody there. It's literally your like austere little European village. He was sad that like growing up they would always play soccer. You know, they're very poor. Right? My father grew up during a fascist dictatorship. There was a man named Salazar who ran like a ruthless military and religious dictatorship in Portugal until the 70s when they had a revolution. And unless you already were an aristocrat who like owned a business, for example, my mother's family owned a chain of bakeries. So they had inns to get like flour and sugar and be able to bake food. And they actually gave away a lot of food to hungry people because they had the means. But if you didn't have a business that the government was, that's the whole point of fascism, right? It's a whole other discussion that people don't really understand is like in Europe, unless you owned like a wholesale business, you didn't eat because the government basically picked you and said, you're the winner. You get to live, you get to eat. So my mother's side had these bakeries. My dad's side was very poor. And when he wanted to play soccer, which is like obviously a passion, the passion of the country, it's their national pastime, they had nowhere to play. And my dad did something that I think invokes the spirit of the organization and what we're trying to do here on a sort of cultural / political level. He literally got together with some people and said, you know what, we're just going to build a club. And they're like, you're crazy. How can you build a club? You have no money. You have no land. I don't remember all the details of how he did it, but he got some property. He built a little clubhouse. Got together with some friends, scrapped together some funds. They had a dirt soccer field. So from the 80s, the early 80s until about 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was a dirt field. And you have to appreciate that. I've gone back to Portugal many times throughout my adolescence, my teenage years, and I've always gone to this field, and I've always had this sort of pride in thinking, my dad started that club, and there's a bunch of kids now. There's thousands of children that get to play in this club, and the irony too is this club is right next to the train station, and for years, for decades, the homeless and gypsy population devastated by heroin would shoot up right outside those fields. So they literally like would pass out or overdose outside the train tracks, like a block away from this club, and then there's a fence, and like you have heaven inside the fence. You have community voluntary. It's not government. There's no government money. It's people that got together, built some walls, and said, if you are part of our family, you can come and play soccer, and you can come and watch the other people play. There's a bar, there's a restaurant in there, and it became a communal place for everyone to get together and get away from the misery of, I hate to say this, their life of poverty, right? So I'm not ashamed to say that I largely stole a little bit of that logo and applied, obviously English language and a different name and, a couple of different aesthetics. But the spirit of people coming together voluntarily outside the scope of politics, outside the scope of government, to make their life a little better is what was the inspiration for me to use that logo. And on a happy note, This club that my dad started is now affiliated with a professional team. They got professional turf put on their field like a couple of years ago. Now it's like a world-class facility. So it's like my father and a couple of his friends started that, and 30, 40 years later, it's an enormous influence on the lives of thousands and thousands of families and children. So in my little way, I hope that our organization has that same effect here in America from a cultural perspective in 30 or 40 years. I'd be honored if I could even do half of what he did.
That's an incredible story. And I'm right there with you. I hope you are at least that successful, if not more so, and build on that legacy too. What else is Blue Star involved in besides just kind of some of the interviews that we've talked about and some of the kind of like getting out in the public? What else are you kind of like what fingers do you have? What pies do you have your finger in?
Yeah, so besides the legal stuff, we will be doing Second Amendment legal stuff. We do the education conversations. The big aspect is the social aspect. Like I said, building a community where people come together and make friends. So we throw parties. Through the winter, we kind of had a little break, a couple of COVID outbreaks amongst certain people in the population, including myself. So now we're going to start the parties again. We want to do it like once a month, have people get together at a bar, at a restaurant. You guys know the Mayetas if you follow us. They've generously allowed us to use their restaurant many times. And we have other restaurants that we're going to be working with as well to throw some parties. But having that social cohesion, people get together, make new friends. People like Steve, who I randomly meet at the boardwalk, and now Steve gets to meet Cannabis Kirk, who randomly heard me on a radio interview. So he comes, now he's meeting Steve, meeting all of you guys. That's the whole point of this. And to get to the point where we eventually have a private location where we get together, wink, wink, Matt. And that's the sort of ultimate goal. And then on top of that, we do the book clubs in a similar vein and in a similar sort of way to get together, talk about something that's not partisan. It's conceptual. It's liberty-based. It's critical thinking. And how can we expand these ideas? Because ideas are more powerful than politics. And hopefully we can influence our culture through that, through building those interpersonal, real in-person relationships.
Yeah, no, I am all on board with that. I think it's no secret that I'm obviously a supporter of yours and of Blue Star Unions, and in ways a partner, because we are building something here in New Jersey that, again, in that vein of what your father was a catalyst for in Portugal, is something that we're kind of doing, in a similar spirit here in New Jersey to kind of create a haven or I want to use the phrase safe space, but it's such a shitty phrase nowadays. It's not a safe space. I mean, you're not going to go there and cry or have hug therapy. I mean, but some awesome shit's going to go down. Like it's an awesome space is what it's going to be. But so to that effect, look, I don't have sponsors on this. The way I make my money is on crypto and other things in the background. So I'm more than happy to also give you a platform. You have 3 awesome sponsors that work for you. So just give them like a really quick plug.
Yeah, absolutely. So The oldest and our first sponsors are right here. That's Lorenzotti Coffee. If you go to lorenzotti.coffee and put in code Blue Star, you get 10% off all of their products. They sponsor a lot of other podcasts in the Liberty sphere. So if you listen to other podcasts in our little circle of friends, you've probably heard of them before. If you're a Second Amendment gun person, this is Shooter Lube. Great people. They're out of Utah. They create this product in America. All the jobs are American. And it's a gun solvent that if you ever have cleaned your stuff with hops number 9 or other types of solvents, they smell like shit. Like they'll literally give you a migraine. This stuff has no odor and it's completely organic. So it's awesome. It comes with a little spray bottle, and they also make a lubricant. So same deal. You go to shooterlube.com, 10%. That supports, gives you a discount, and they give a donation to us. And lastly, a very close friend of the Mayetas is generous enough to sponsor our book clubs. So this is Organica vodka. It's a Russian vodka that it's funny. Their sort of crusade is to help the Amur tigers. So it's an endangered Siberian tiger in Russia that coincidentally gets poached by the Chinese at the Sino-Russian border, whatever they call it. I always tell this anecdote. The way they like help those tigers is by flying drones at the border and then like making them fly into Russia so that the cats like chase it. It's kind of a funny game they play with the drone. So if you see this, if you don't see it at your store, ask for it. We don't even make money off of this. This is just a friend of the organization that helps us and keeps us lubricated during our book events, our book club events. So I mean, and that really is the spirit, right? So like, if somebody else wants to promote something and they want to be a part of one of our parties, say I don't know, that you're a baker and you want to launch a cookie line, or you have a vodka, or you have a liquor, or you have some kind of product. Hey, bring it to one of our parties, and I don't want money. I'll just say, hey, this event is sponsored by this X. And we'll give it out to people, and maybe you build a following. Who knows? We are here to help each other. We are not here through any coercion. We are not here because the government is telling us to be here. Like my dad, we have a vision to build a community of people that help each other and become brothers and sisters. And Organica is like a small sliver of that, right? They're people who are donating to us for our events, and we hope to help them in return. So go to your liquor store. If you don't see it, ask for it. It's a fantastic premium vodka.
Yeah, and I'm not a big time vodka drinker. I'll have it like in something every so often. We had a little at the last book club. It was fantastic.
It wasn't a little. If you saw how Mike Rufo behaved at the conclusion, that bottle was almost empty when we were done.
Everything's relative. But yeah, I had it straight. Most of us drank it straight. It was fantastic. It was smooth. I mean, it even has kind of little flavor to it, kind of like a little floral kind of aspect to it, and it was really good. And Mitch chiming in one last time saying we should read the Unabomber manifesto at some point in time, and his kid will get involved in the mix there. Look, the floor is open. I think we're reading Liberty or Lockdown is the one that we're reading now, and so we're open to recommendations. There's some things that have kind of been like core canon for this kind of like either minimalist government or libertarian / anarchist kind of framework that we've been working from recently. But we're wide open. Like we actually have some plans to read some crazy out of the box type shit too. So there's going to be some fun times to be had. On that note, what are you doing tonight? Because you are live at like 9:05 tonight Eastern.
Yeah, man, I am really excited for tonight. This is going to be a great one. So at 9:05, I always do it like 5 minutes after because people say 9 and they're like, oh, I'll wait till the clock says 9 and then I'll kind of make my way to the TV. So at 9:05 p.m. Eastern, we have a couple of guests that you already know if you've watched us before. We have Dwight Pinozzo, who is a NYU professor and a doctor. He is part of the Brady campaign and a group called Gays Against Guns. He's been on 2 podcasts before. Really nice guy. He's had a conversation with me, and he's had a conversation with David Maxim about an initiative that he has about the U.S. Senate. So he's been on twice. and Dennis Hirschfelder, who is a associate of his, who is on the committee for the Brady campaign in New Jersey as well. So two sort of gun control activists, and they're going to be speaking in the same space as my good friend Keith Pantaleon, who, if you don't know him, Google his story. He had a very interesting past with some tragically abusive behavior by a police department in North Jersey. I'll let you look it up. And he got off of the charges, so I'm very happy about that. But I got to meet him through the Second Amendment space, and he is one of the smartest people I know, one of the funniest people I know. He loves analogies. Like every time he makes a point, he'll like reference a movie or a book or a funny voice or whatever. He's just a great guy to listen to. And he's going to be having a conversation with those two gentlemen. Dennis has never been on before, so I'm excited to welcome him for the first time. I'm going to be there, but I'm going to try to sit in the shadows and let them kind of all duke it out about Second Amendment stuff. But they're going to talk about natural rights, gun violence, and the role of a Second Amendment in our society here in New Jersey. So if you want to see a great debate, a great conversation between sort of opposing viewpoints in a friendly and collegial manner, 9:05, check out Blue Star Union's YouTube page, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we're going to be rocking in about an hour. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's I will be watching as well, so definitely check that out. And like this show, they do take some questions and comments from the audience as well, so make sure to get in there. Not to mention the fact that even when you're not taking the questions and comments, you're kind of going through the just talking with the guests. The conversation that happens amongst the attendees in the audience is also absolutely fantastic. So definitely check it out. And like Dan said, subscribe to Blue Star Union on YouTube and anywhere else that I think Twitter and Facebook are the three big ones for you guys. So definitely check that out. So with that, that's it. We are done for the evening. It's a 2-Dan week. I got Dan Francisco tonight, and then I got Dan Taxation is Theft Berman tomorrow night, running for Texas governor in 2022. So that should be an interesting interview as well, because Dan's fantastic. He's got some unique angles and thought process going on, which is really good. So with that, everyone have a very good evening, and check out Blue Star Union tonight talking Second Amendment.
Love you, brother. Thank you.